For the past 5 years, I've volunteered for a mental health hotline. I'm deeply passionate about the hotline's work, and I've devoted huge amounts of time and energy to answering calls, training new volunteers, and fundraising. I've become close friends with many of the people I volunteer with, and I get a lot of joy out of helping people who don't have a lot of other support in their lives. I love this organization. I can't imagine my life without it. Today, the head of the organization sent out an email announcing that they've hired a new volunteer coordinator. The girl who relentlessly bullied me in high school and made my life a living hell. I was completely blindsided. I moved across the continent after graduating from high school, and I have no idea how or when this girl moved to my city. I doubt she applied for this job to deliberately antagonize me, since we've had no contact since graduation and all volunteers are anonymous. So it's just a terrible coincidence. But it still means I'm going to have to be working with a person who was unbelievably cruel to me. I really don't know what to do. Obviously, all of this was a long time ago, and it's possible she's cleaned up her act since high school. But I still hate the idea of even being in the same room as this girl. I've had her blocked on every platform for, wow, over a decade now. It looks like my only options are to A, tough it out and deal with this person coming back into my life, or B, quit the hotline after 5 years of service. I went for my regularly scheduled afternoon shift at the hotline, and the girl just happened to be there for some kind of orientation. I wasn't expecting her to be there, so I initially just kept my head down and ignored her. A little while into the shift, she came over to introduce herself, and genuinely didn't seem to recognize me. I've cut my hair and gotten glasses since high school, so that could have been it. It was a very brief interaction, and I didn't say anything to her in return, just nodded and smiled. After she left, I asked my shift supervisor if I could speak with her privately. I followed some of the advice here, just letting her know that I have a history with this person and I'm not comfortable working with her directly. The shift supervisor was very understanding and said that she could arrange for me to only serve shifts when the girl isn't supervising. She also offered to let me schedule my shifts through her instead of through the girl, which I appreciated. Unfortunately, it seems like there will be an unavoidable level of casual interaction, given that the girl is working in the facility on a full-time, 9-to-5 basis. I think I'll be able to stick it out for now, but we'll see. The shift supervisor did ask me what I wanted to tell the girl. Vis-a-vis an excuse for my not wanting to be on shift with her, but I couldn't think of anything to say. So I left it up to her. My children are 17 and 14 respectively, and I'm hoping the fact that they're teenagers is the reason for their incredibly shitty behavior. My husband, before he met me, had a wife and a newborn baby that passed away in Canada due to hazardous road conditions that resulted in a 4-car smash-up. No one was at fault, it was a horrific disaster. And my husband was devastated as a result and fell into alcoholism to cope. I had my own trauma from the past, and similarly turned to alcoholism to cope. It was at an AA meeting where we met, 20 years ago almost to the day now. And we slowly started to heal together here in the US. I have always been incredibly respectful of my husband's last wife and child. I like to joke that I'm keeping her seat warm until my husband enters heaven. I've had too much loss and hurt in my life to feel jealousy like this. And I am so damaged that I just feel lucky that I got to actually feel love in this world, and that my husband could open his beautiful heart to me. We had 2 children, 2 sons. We'd never told them about my husband's wife or baby, because it's a part of my husband's life that he keeps under lock and key. He has never healed from his grief, and therapy etc. has helped him only to a degree. My mother-in-law told the kids this Sunday gone, as she decided it was time for them to know. She didn't consult us before telling them, and certainly didn't do it in our presence. Since then my sons have been making the most disgusting dead baby jokes. They've been prodding their dad asking why we'd never told them. And instead of approaching the topic with respect, they're acting like we've kept a secret affair family from them or something. My 14Y//0 went on to say to me in private, thank goodness not in front of his father, that he was glad my husband's previous family was dead. I broke and yelled at him, and told him it was the most disgusting thing I'd ever heard him say. I asked where his anger was coming from, and he burst forth that we were shitty parents for keeping secrets. He told me that it made so much sense why we were abnormal, why we don't drink, why we are so boring and quiet, why my husband is panicky around roads, etc. The two are pretty heartbroken, and I feel like we have just destroyed a part of our children's lives as a result of us staying quiet. I am hurting, my husband is grieving all over again, and I don't know how to proceed. I have and will always reiterate to our kids that they are loved, but this behavior seems so overreactive for the news. I am 20 female, have recently moved out of my mother's house for college. I enrolled in scholarship. The other night, my mother wanted her, my younger brother, and I to have dinner together. It's been a while since we've spoken, and I'm afraid this might happen again. We were having a nice night, the dinner was delicious, and honestly, we were all having a good time. Eventually, we got onto the topic of how things were when I was younger. I made the comment on how her behavior when I was younger made me feel like I missed out on a lot of things as a child. She disagrees, and tells me that I'm being dramatic, and that my childhood was perfect. Quote, I was lucky to have a mom who cared as much as she did. My mother gave birth to me when she was 18. My father walked out when I was young, due to a personal conflict between the two. So, she raised me on her own until I was 7. She met a guy, and they ended up having a kid together, my younger brother. He was a golden child to my mom. His father was only a temporary item, as he left as well, soon after. Although the father of my brother was still visible in his life, I didn't have anyone to look up to as a father figure. Eventually, my mom went through a phase of depression after they separated. She started to care less and less about her children, and more about her parties and men she wanted to sleep with. It ended up getting so bad that by the time I was 10, I was a full-time caretaker of my younger brother. With the exceptions of the weekends he was with his father. I started to cook, clean, do everyone's laundry, and take care of everything outside of the boundaries of my home. From ages 13 to 15 I began missing out and losing good friends because I wasn't able to participate in any activity related to anyone else. I didn't get a car or a phone until I was 18, and even then I wasn't allowed to leave my house. I graduated senior year with flying colors and ended up getting a scholarship to a really good college. I took this opportunity not only to focus on myself, but to also help my mother realize that I was not going to be around forever. When she found out I got the scholarship, she threw a fit and told me I wasn't allowed to leave my responsibilities here at home. I left a week after the conversation. I did make sure that my younger brother was safe with his second guardian at the time. My mother and I talked on some occasions but never really kept contact. We got together, and you know the story. She told me I am an asshole for saying that she never really took care of me or my younger brother. I told her that eventually, she will need to get help and stop victimizing herself. But I'm starting to feel guilty, and that maybe I was dramatic after all. I've officially decided that I no longer need my mother in my life at this point in time. I'm now going to only focus on myself, and working towards a successful career in law. Of course, my mom won't take it well, but it won't really matter to her in the long run. Her children never really mattered to her. I'm going to stay in contact with my younger brother, though. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't possibly go through the same amount of trauma I did. I got my son a 7K motorcycle for his 18th birthday this past June. My son is obsessed with automobile and loves motorcycles. In his room he has plenty of models and posters of motorcycles of all types. His bio dad passed away when he was just 12, now I'm married to my current husband and he has kids of his own. My husband has always been against my son's interest in motorcycles. He thinks I'm encouraging him to be reckless, distracting him from school and by extension his future, and spoiling him and blowing away money by spending 7K on a motorcycle. This caused some tension between him and my son, so I told him to stop complaining about it. Around 2 weeks ago, my son's motorcycle went missing. We opened a police report but nothing came out of it. It just disappeared. My husband had a smirk on his face the entire time, just walking around saying, "I told you so. You just wasted your money." This was unbearable to hear, to be quite honest. My mother-in-law visited few days ago. She was talking about the other house my husband owns and mentioned seeing a motorcycle. One that's similar to the one that we lost in my husband's carriage while she was cleaning it. She goes to clean that house weekly even though it's empty. My husband plans on giving it to his kids as inheritance. I was puzzled. I asked if she was certain, but she showed me a photo she took of it which confirmed that it was indeed my son's motorcycle. I immediately rushed to call my husband and confront him about it. He admitted that he took and hid the motorcycle in his garage as a last resort after me and his stepson kept brushing him, and his thoughts off about the $7,000 being spent on something unnecessary and that could cause issues. I blew up at him demanding he return it. He refused and told me he had been considering selling it and giving the money back to me so I could use it wisely this time. I told him I was serious and that I'd call the police. He literally said, "This is a family matter and cops can't do shit about it." I had enough. I called the cops soon as I ended the call with him. The motorcycle was found and returned. But my husband had to be taken in since there was an open file about the motorcycles going missing. He was let go eventually, but he was livid with me. He came home yelling about how awful what I did was and how crazy my behavior was. I refused to engage in the argument, but he told his entire family about it and they judged me for calling the police on my own husband, even though I already asked him to return it. He said he was just looking out for my son and that one day we'll realize that he was right, but only when it's too late. My son isn't speaking to me or my husband. I feel horrible about the whole situation and am starting to think I handled this the wrong way.